Here now to react is Jason Chaffetz, former Utah congressman and chairman of House Oversight Committee. He's also a Fox News contributor. Jason, the public humiliation of Jeff Sessions, how much longer can it go on?
Well, Jeff Sessions is there in name only. He is absolutely worthless as the Attorney General. The single biggest thing that they're dealing with there at the DOJ, he's recused himself, and he's absolutely absent when it comes to document production and other key things within the agency.
Forgive me for interrupting,
whether or not
he is the highest law enforcement agent in the country. I mean, it's a very significant position. It's not like he's got some position that most of us don't deal with. This is an extraordinary for the president to have lost all confidence in the highest law enforcement agent in the country is very serious. No.
Yeah, and this is not the first time that the president has tweeted his displeasure with his attorney general. I wish he would leave. I think he was a good senator, and I think he's a decent human being, but he can't do the job. He's not up to it. He's there in name only. He's just occupying the seat, and they need to get into the process of nominating somebody else so they can go through that process and have a real attorney general for once.
Well, of course, what started the whole lack of confidence on the president's part in Sessions was the recusal and the starting up of the special counsel on the Russian investigation. There's this new sort of line being spun now in the media that unless you're sophisticated, you don't really believe that there was a spy in the FBI that was planted in the Trump campaign. Most people who know better don't call it a spy. It was an informant, and this is regular procedure. Sort of the Jim Clapper line that in fact the informant was put in the Trump campaign to help the Trump campaign, not to spy on the Trump campaign. Where do you fit in this new scenario?
Well, this is an important distinction. Everything that we've said, that's been said, is that it was not a criminal investigation. That would be treated differently. At a counterintelligence operation, that would be different. And what seems to be a break from protocol is that the FBI, the Department of Justice, did not inform then candidate Trump, President-elect Trump, and President Trump. Each one of these steps, they should have informed Donald Trump that this was happening because it was not a criminal probe. And that is a huge difference in how operationally the Department of Justice treats these things.
And frankly, I'm not sure that I buy the fact that all of these FBI officials who were vehemently anti-Donald Trump, I mean, people like Peter Strzok, Bruce Orr at the Department of Justice, Andy McCabe, who lost his job because he wasn't frank, and then of course Fusion GPS, which kind of worked like a subcontractor, which was hired by the Hillary campaign. I can't believe that they would be put in the Trump campaign to help Donald Trump.
Well, again, our government, when you're the nominee for president, we help you. We give you Secret Service protection. We give you CIA briefings. And if there was a counterintelligence operation then concerned that Russians or anybody else was trying to infiltrate the campaign, they should be telling the president that. But they didn't seem to do that. And that's why it becomes highly suspicious, and we need more information.
And we need more information. That's the bottom line. The Wall Street Journal had an editorial. It seems like it was months ago. It was just a week ago. It was titled "The Informant Who Wasn't Spying," and they were being sarcastic about that because they did think it was a spy in the Trump campaign. They said the public deserves to know who tasked the informant to seek out Trump campaign officials, what his orders were, what the justification was for doing so, and who was aware of it. Was the knowledge limited to the FBI, or did it run into the Obama White House? I would think those are questions that the American public has a right to know.
And where is the national media's curiosity? They just seem to give these people a pass. They used to be so anti and so concerned about the Department of Justice and the FBI and snooping. But then if it's on Donald Trump, hey, well, they're okay with it. So the duplicity there on the Democrat side and on the national media is really quite sickening. But these are legitimate questions. And their timelines, by the way, they don't match up at all. So somebody needs to answer a whole lot of questions.
Jason Chaffetz, good to see you, Jason. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
From last hour, Alan Dershowitz reacting as President Trump said last night that the Bureau is trying to infiltrate his campaign. Meanwhile, Trump pointing to some comments by Trey Gowdy about the AG Jeff Sessions, saying there are lots of other good lawyers he could have picked for the job, and Trump tweeting earlier today that he said he wishes he had. Former Congressman Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor. How you doing, sir? And welcome back, Jason, to America's News. A lot of this hinges on an appearance that Trey Gowdy had with Martha last night. Gowdy was in a classified briefing last Thursday. Very few have even mentioned what happened inside that briefing. Here is how he explained it last night.
It was President Trump himself who said, number one, I didn't collude with Russia, but if anyone connected with my campaign did, I want the FBI to find that out. It looks to me like the FBI was doing what President Trump said, I want you to do, find it out.
So what Gowdy also said is that he saw, based on the hearing, that President Trump was not a target. What do you think of this now?
Oh, a couple of things. First of all, that happened in 2017, and the issue that where Donald Trump made those comments, and the issue we're talking about is largely in 2016. The other major thing that you have to understand is that this was, by all accounts, a counterintelligence investigation. That is far different than a criminal probe. Attorney General Sessions should have never recused himself. You don't need to recuse yourself from a counterintelligence investigation, so he was fundamentally wrong when he made that. That's what created the special counsel. And number two, they should have informed Donald Trump himself. We as a country, we protect our presidential candidates. We give them Secret Service protection. We give them CIA briefings daily, even before they become the president. And if there was a counterintelligence operation, they should have informed Donald Trump along the way, even when he was the president-elect. They had a duty and an obligation, and protocol would say that they would actually give him a briefing. But evidently they didn't. Why did they break protocol yet again?
Yeah, I get it. I don't know the answer yet. My suggestion to Alan Dershowitz is that perhaps the FBI was looking for something. They could not find it. Therefore, they kept looking, and perhaps that's why they did not pass on the word. Does that logic fly with you, possibly?
Absolutely does not. There is the Gang of Eight, which there is an obligation for counterintelligence operations to be briefed. You have a president-elect in Donald Trump, and as president, again, counterintelligence operations are briefed to the president. Why did they not do that? It seems really mystifying, and that's why until they actually get and see these documents, people like John Radcliffe and Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy will never really fully get that answer. But we saw what they did to Hillary Clinton. They wiped out a protocol in the Hillary Clinton investigation, and on Donald Trump, they're pretty aggressive in inserting spies into this campaign, and I don't think that final determination is there yet, Bill.
Yeah. Would you sit for an interview now? Trey Gowdy suggests that, based on what he saw, go ahead and talk to Mueller. Alan Dershowitz says, do not do that. That's a bad attorney's advice, and he would not sit down. Quickly answer that, and I'll ask you about Jeff Sessions.
I think there'll be a little bit of both, because I think Donald Trump, in his gut, really does want to talk to these people, but his legal team's going to have to set up the parameters for such a discussion. I think he will do it.
You think he will?
Hmm?
Okay.
Yeah, I just think he's different than everybody else in the world. He does things differently, and he'll do it.
On the Jeff Sessions tweets, there were three of them. Here's the third one. He's quoting Trey Gowdy. There were lots of really good lawyers in the country. He could have picked somebody else, end quote, and I wish I did. Jeff Sessions, has he got a target back on him again or not?
Jeff Sessions, as the Attorney General, is there in name only. He's absolutely worthless. The sooner the president names a new Attorney General, the better. He should never have recused himself. He didn't need to in a counterintelligence operation. And we have major systemic problems at the FBI, and he's nowhere on document production, nowhere on these things. I mean, you got Rod Rosenstein running the place. It's time to get rid of Jeff Sessions. A long time ago.
Jason, got it. Jason Chaffetz, thank you for your time today. We'll see you again real soon. Thanks, Bill.
Despite the president's obvious frustration with his attorney general, did Jeff Sessions actually do the president a big favor by recusing? Let's ask former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and UC Berkeley Law Professor John Yoo for his analysis. Great to have you with us, John.
Hi, Shannon.
All right, so the president is clearly upset and frustrated again, venting at the AG. But has Sessions actually done him a favor as we now wait for the Mueller report?
I think so. I think Donald Trump, the president, should lay off the attorney general. I think Sessions, it's a close call whether he should have recused himself. I think he should have. You heard Rudy Giuliani was saying he thought maybe he would have recused himself. He's in the same position. Think about it if it had been the reverse. Think about if Sessions had not recused himself. then you would have story after story questioning whether there's political interference from Trump to the Attorney General to the special counsel. This way, the best thing that can happen for Trump is, I think Mueller finds no collusion. As you just said, it doesn't look like he's a target of the investigation. If Mueller comes out with that in his report, that has utter and final credibility, because there's no doubt that the president could not have influenced it through Sessions.
Yeah, and this is what a little bit of what Giuliani said earlier today. Things are moving in his direction, meaning the president. If you fire somebody, even though it's legitimate, you're going to just raise a lot of questions. Do you think the president will follow his advice?
Yes, I do. I think that, first, I don't think there should be much doubt that the president has the constitutional authority to remove Mueller. He's not protected by any statute. He's just independent by regulation. And ultimately, the president is the top law enforcement officer in the country, and he controls all the prosecutors at the federal level. But I think it's wise for Trump to leave Mueller alone. The best thing he can do is cooperate, even sit down for an interview, and try to get Mueller to wrap up the investigation as fast as possible. And then once that happens, Mueller's report clearing the president has the most credibility that you could have in our system. In fact, the more Trump tries to interfere, the less credibility, the less cover that Mueller can give him.
Well, and you know all along, what we've heard is potentially a problem for the president is this issue that Mueller is looking into, obstruction of justice. An opinion piece today in the Washington Post by Paul Waldman says this: the debate is over. Of course Trump obstructed justice. And he goes on to say this: by his own admission, Trump fired the FBI director to stop the investigation. He enlisted other government officials in an attempt to hinder it. He has said both privately and publicly that he expects his attorney general to protect him from that investigation, not to do his job, not to serve the interests of justice, not to strictly adhere to the law and the department's ethical codes, but to protect Trump. There's simply no argument left over whether Trump obstructed justice. He did. Well, there you go. Open and shut case, John.
Well, I don't think Mueller is going to be vacating his job for Mr. Waldman anytime soon, because this guy might be, the Washington Post writer, might be using obstruction in some colloquial sense. But he even admits in that piece, which I looked at this afternoon, that he's not talking about the legal definition of obstruction of justice. Look at it this way. President Trump fired Comey. He had the constitutional right to do so. And I think after everything we've seen of Comey since he's been fired, it was a good idea not to have someone like that as FBI director, who just inherently leaking left and right, writing down little memos of his conversations with everybody, leaking them to the New York Times, possibly classified information. Two, if Trump really wanted to obstruct justice, he should have never allowed an independent counsel to be picked. He could have fired Sessions. He could have fired Rosenstein. He could fire Mueller. Instead, he has, despite his complaining, I mean, sometimes the president whines too much about this investigation, but despite the whining, Mueller has been allowed to conduct his investigation. If there's obstruction, let's see it. I don't see any case for obstruction.
Well, we will know sooner or later. Even Democrats talking today about the fact that it's time to wrap it up before the American public is just simply too fatigued to even care anymore. John Yoo, thank you very much. Always great to have you with us.
Thanks, Shannon.